Okay, so the very first principal area that I want to talk about is alignment, and alignment of interests. Now, we think that an alignment of interests is actually pretty key to understanding the way that angel investors do what we do. We want to make sure that our interests and the founders' interests are well aligned so that we can move towards getting a positive exit for everybody. Now, this is usually quite an easy thing to do in the sense that, or a natural thing to do in the sense that angel investors and founders are both investing directly. We have our own personal investment in the company. We are motivated by our own personal engagement. Now, there are other parties, of course. There are any other shareholders other than founders who might either pre-exist us or later join as ordinary shareholders in the company, and of course the staff of the company. And so an alignment of interest has to take those into account as well. And then one of the most challenging alignments of interest is to make sure that we take into account the follow-on investors. So we have to have terms that give us the best chance of preserving that alignment of interest with the founders and the other parties when another round comes in. One of the differences with later round investors is they're frequently aligning their interest with the company's interest and not the interest of the people in the company. And that's a big difference. Angel investors are frequently aligning our interest with the founders as individuals because of that similarity of who we are and the perspective that we take. Ultimately, it's still about the company succeeding or nobody gets what they want. So where do we build alignment? So there are a number of different parts of the agreement that address alignment, and I just want to highlight how some of those work for you. So the goal of alignment, among other things, is to achieve good governance for the business. Good governance, good stewardship is part of what keeps a business going, directed to its intended outcome and benefiting everybody. So in Schedule 1, we have a description of the business. We have a description of who's involved, the founders, the ordinary shareholders and the angel investors, us. The numbers in the brackets refer to the clauses or the items in the schedule. We have a thing called the materiality threshold. Now that's a dollar number that's used to test certain elements of the agreement. If something is more than that dollar number, then it's material and it's subject to some of the controls and decisions that the angel investor majority may be able to influence or exercise. And then, of course, there's the whole description of the board and the directors. Now, Schedule 3 is all about conditions precedent. Conditions precedent include doing due diligence, having the company adopt a constitution compatible with the way our shareholder agreement works, making sure that any debts or loans or outstanding obligations of the company are resolved prior to us investing, so that the impact of those happens prior to us investing. And then, of course, there's the matter of the ESIC, whether or not the company qualifies, and those members who want to can take the tax incentive. And then a specific use of funds should also be detailed as a condition precedent. Now, doing all of these things, these are the sorts of things that help us align expectations, right? It makes sure that the founders, the other shareholders, and the angel investors all understand what the ground rules are, what the basis of the investment is, and how we intend to proceed. Now, in Schedule 4, which is about the transfer of shares, we have a new concept called founder vesting. It's not labelled that in the document, but the intention is that the founders will actually put some of their shares at risk at the time that we invest. It happens for a number of reasons, but it's to align their interests with the interest of ourselves and the company, that they are motivated to continue to work in the business and grow the business. What this vesting does is it gives the protection to the company and to the other shareholders that equity will not be absconded, and it means that the founders won't leave in a bad way. If there's a legitimate reason for them to leave, that doesn't have to be a problem. The other thing is the lifestyle clause, and we'll talk more about founder vesting later on. The lifestyle clause, which we've had before, this is essentially a form of redemption. It says that if the company gets into the position where it's just not going anywhere, our money is locked up and there's no particular hope or expectation that the company is ever going to do anything except just stay alive, then we have an option to exercise our right to ask for our shares to be bought back by the company over a period of time. And again, this is about setting expectations and aligning interests towards the equity growth, the value growth and the exit. And if that's not going to happen, then we're no longer aligned and we should have a mechanism to part company. Schedule 6 is about information rights. So again, having timely information, both in the form of reporting and in the form of direct exchange, make sure that we know what's going on, that the founders know what's going on. If they're producing a report, then we would assume that they have understood through a generation of that report, that they know the information in it. And that way we all have the same information, and then we can understand where the business is going, and if it's timely information, then we can get engaged and offer our support, our guidance and our advice, which is the way we want to work, to help keep the company moving forward. So again, this is about an alignment of interests by using information. And then the Schedule 7 is warranties. And this is just building up a basis of knowing what's been happening before we get onto the business, and that there is an expectation, a mutual expectation, that we enjoy a degree of protection from anything untoward that might have happened before we invested in the company. So that's a little bit about alignment. Does anybody have any questions you'd like to ask about alignment?
Thanks. My question related to founder shares, and I understood, if I understood it correctly, that if they abscond from the business in the early years, they effectively forfeit some of their shares. But is there also, in our standard arrangements, an escrow of their shares for a period of time? An escrow meaning they can't sell shares?
It has the same effect. The founder vesting terms include any attempt by the founders to sell their shares.
Right, okay.
If they want to sell their shares, and we can approve to allow them to sell their shares, but the terms do prevent them from selling their shares without our approval.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
If I can add to that
Yes,
too,
please.
there are also the usual preemptive rights that attach to shares. So that if a shareholder wants to sell, the shares are offered to the other shareholders in preemptive basis at a value that's determined in accordance with the agreement too.
Yeah.
And any other questions about the alignment issues? No? So we'll talk more about, the question was about good leaver, bad leaver. We'll talk more about that when we come back to the founder vesting in a later session, when we talk about equity. Okay. Fafa?
Is there a consideration about ESOP in the alignment section?
Right, so the question about conditions precedent and settling liabilities includes the expectation that if there is going to be an employee participation scheme of some sort, that will actually be established, and the dilution impact of that will happen prior to our investing. Then, of course, once we've invested, we'll exist alongside that. But for that to happen once we've invested, again, that's one of the things that we have not preferential rights. That's one of the things that we need. We have to consent to any changes in an employee participation program.